All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Monticello live stream on Monday morning. I am Lucy Midelfort. I'm the Conservator and Curator of Historic Architecture, and I'm sitting here with Carol Richardson and Jolen Bain, our Restoration Specialists here. And we are here to just provide some fun updates on recent restoration work here at Monticello, and also some things that are in progress and projects that are coming up, which we're excited to excited to happen. And on the recent work, we've actually already prepared some videos for you to show, for you to see about what we've been up to. The first one that I'm going to highlight is a project that Carol and Jolen worked on a lot last year, which is redaubing all of the log cabins of the Hemings Cabin and the storehouse for iron, both of which were reconstructed in the last 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Like that.
Reconstructed in 2014 and 2016, we believe. And you'll see what that all entailed in this video. At the Hemings Cabin, this is a reconstructed cabin, a log structure, but we know that in the early 19th century it housed an enslaved family, the Hemings family. It's a log structure, and in between the logs is chinking and daub. Daub is a sacrificial material, which means that it doesn't last very long and you have to replace it periodically. So that's what the restoration specialists are working on.
Hi, this is Carol from Restoration, and today we are mixing daubing for this cabin, which is our project for this week. And I'll show you what this traditional mix is. First of all, we have 3 parts clay, 3 parts sand, 2 parts lime, and a little bit of chopped up straw. And then what this does is this will make this mud mixture, and it will hold it together and it will bind it, and we'll add a little bit of water to this, and then we'll apply it to the chinking, which is on the cabin, the little wood pieces. And it's almost like a plaster and lath mix that keys into it, and then it'll get hard and it'll shed water then. So water is going to make this more like a clay putty mixture. But you just kind of start mixing this all in together. The main reason we're doing this year is because we have some insect damage with our cabins. We have powder post beetles. So we took all the chinking out and the daubing. So now we have to put it all back in. Every year, we've had to replace sections of the cabin because obviously it's a wood structure. So it expands and contracts, which kind of forces the daubing and the chinking out or cracks it. Oh, and you can see how all the bits of straw kind of mixing around in it. And the straw really kind of helps bind it together. All right, I think that is good to go. You kind of see how it kind of holds into a ball.
I'm Jolen Bain here with Restoration at Monticello, and we're doing some redaubing. We come in before we put some of this wood in here. That's called the chinking, and that actually gives something for the daub mix to kind of stick to and key to. Some people use a tool. I like to get in with my hands and just kind of get it started and get it in there. Basically, we have to do maintenance on it every year. So we're out here at least once a year doing sections of it because it kind of cracks and it'll fall out and just ages with time.
So at this cabin, we are trying to tell as complete a story about this family as possible, and that means using traditional materials, even if they don't necessarily last. All right, daubing. That was quite a project, huh?
Yeah.
How many months do you think it took to do all that?
Most of the summer, I think.
Yeah, it was most
took
of the
us-
summer.
Yeah.
So I think we started in spring and carried through pretty much most of the summer, 3-4 months,
All right.
Yeah,
something like that.
labor intensive.
Labor. One thing we didn't show was we also do this from the inside of the cabin, but we do the outside first, and then we can press it in between the logs, which are narrower gaps on the inside of the cabin.
Yeah. And so the thing about this material, right, is that this is the traditional material. We said that in the video, but
Right.
this is sacrificial, meaning the logs stay the same, but this daub is sort of renewed
Right.
over and over again
Yeah.
over the lifetime of the cabin. Yeah.
And we've also removed it occasionally to let school children, to show them and let them actually try to put it in themselves, which has been kind of fun over the last few years.
It is fun.
So
Hands-on restoration.
they like to tear it out.
They liked it. So did the
Yeah.
the descendants when they
Yeah.
were here. They really they started it and they tore out like an entire
Yeah.
whole wall of it.
They like to tear it
Couldn't
out.
stop them. Yep.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's just so fun.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else can we say about this project? The pest treatment, which was for
Right.
powder post beetles, which we discovered on these cabins,
Yeah.
also involved applying a modern insecticide,
Right.
Boracare, onto everything before we put on the.
We had to
on the
remove
daub.
all of the chinking and daubing before we applied that. And then we had to let that soak in and dry before we could start installing the chinking back in.
Mhm.
And the chinking was also coated with the Boracare.
Yeah, yeah. This is, of course, not a material that would have been available in the early 19th century.
Right.
But here we are. We want these cabins to last as long as possible in our current setting. All right, our next video that we have is about another recent project, the Venetian porch deck replacement. These porches were reconstructed in the late 1990s. You'll see this in the video, but it was another big project from the last year.
Ford. I'm the Conservator and Curator for Historic Architecture here at Monticello. What you hear behind me is some really exciting work happening on our Venetian porches on the southern side of the house. These are reconstructions, so don't worry, we're not damaging any original material, but we are taking care of a really important structure that was part of Jefferson's original design to the second iteration of Monticello. These porches were reconstructed in the late 1990s, really beautifully and exactingly according to Jefferson's original design. And as you can see, these are exposed porches that get a lot of sun, a lot of rain. The trouble is just that they are almost too perfectly constructed. They hold on to water. And we believe that Jefferson's original structures probably also suffered this damage. The reconstructions were done in the late 1990s out of a beautiful mahogany. What you see here is a team that is working to replace areas that have started to rot. So we have a crew here that is removing the walls of the structure, as well as the decks and the stairs, and replacing pretty much all the decks and all the stairs and just the small portions of the walls that are suffering from rot. During this project, the great thing is that we are introducing some very, very small design tweaks that are going to allow this porch to shed water better. So some slightly increased slopes on the deck and the stairs, a little bit more breathing room in the blinds so that water that does get caught under there has actual room to drain. These are very subtle design tweaks that, most people will never notice, but they're going to allow them to function a lot better. This is the kind of compromise that sometimes we have to make here at a historic site. We want whatever we do to last as long as possible, and that sometimes means straying from the historical record. We expect this work to take roughly 2 months, and afterward we're really excited to have fully functioning, beautiful porticles to showcase for all visitors who come to Monticello.
It took a long time.
All right. Yeah, that time lapse at the end does make it seem like it all happened
Yeah.
very
Weeks
quickly.
and weeks later.
That did take what, 2.5 months?
Yeah.
So the time lapse
Made it look a lot quicker.
made
Yeah.
it look a lot faster. But I'm really pleased with the
Yeah.
result.
And remember, that's both sides, and another corner terrace was also involved in that also.
That's right. So the
we had-
porch decks and the stairs of both of those porches,
plus the north corner terrace.
the
was
north corner
also
terrace,
rebuilt
which didn't,
also.
yeah, and that didn't have the porch structure, but
Right.
the stairs. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of work. We actually ended up replacing it out of also a different material because the mahogany that was used in the 90s I mean, mahogany is an incredible
Mhm.
material, but
Mhm.
it just didn't last
Didn't
in the
hold
way
up.
that any of us expected it should.
Yeah, I'd done numerous repairs on that, and everything just started rotting right after I had worked on
Right.
it. It's the porches themselves were just holding water in, and they were rotting from the inside out, and there was just no way to save that wood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really too bad. But they were really beautifully done.
Yeah. One thing that's kind of neat is there are old Holsinger photographs that show the Venetian porches still intact in the 1880s.
Mhm,
And then I'm not sure when they were removed.
mhm. Well,
I
they've
don't
been
know if-
reconstructed no fewer than
Right,
3 times.
right.
Yeah. So, as I said, I don't think this is a new problem for these porches because they are just so exposed.
Right,
But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that with the slope
right.
and extra breathing room, that it'll all function a lot better.
Hopefully it'll
Yep.
get at least another 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
out of
Oh, when I
it.
started talking about the different wood that we use, what we actually
Mm.
ended up using this time is a Koya,
Koya.
which is a really it's actually a new-ish product. It's pine that has been treated, acetylated, or treated with vinegar essentially to become rot resistant, more dimensionally stable, more pest resistant. So our hope with this Koya is that it helps these last a lot longer.
Yep.
All right, our last recent project update for today is sand painting on the east portico of the house. Take a look.
Here we are on the east portico of Monticello. What you see behind me is rusticated stone. It's not actually stone. We have wood that's painted to look like stone and then covered in sand. So this was originally sand painted in Jefferson's day, but what we have here was redone in the early 1980s. So over 40 years, it's very slowly started to wear away in some areas. So what we're doing right now is our restoration specialists are carefully touching up the areas that have worn away. That's a tricky process because the sand doesn't change color over 40 years, but the paint behind it does. And so we are carefully matching paint that has faded over 40 years. If you look over here, we are working today to touch up this area. So the process here is that first we apply a primer, a tinted primer, and then we apply a layer of sand, and then we'll apply actually another layer of paint and then another layer of sand. And this can't all be done in one day, but the end result is that we'll have a smooth finish that matches the color of the sand that exists already here. We're hoping these touch-ups last a good long time because whenever you have to redo an entire facade, so all of this rustication, you lose a lot of the detail of the wood and the paint behind it. So it's really important for us to apply as few coats as possible. That's why we're doing these touch-ups.
This was really exciting because we didn't know whether we were actually going to be able to match
Right.
the sand painting.
Right.
I mean, to try to match something that
It's
is
40 years old.
40 years old with fading and also dirt and soot that has
Right.
accumulated on there, to
Yeah.
actually try to match that is quite a feat.
Hand grease. A lot of visitors touch the surface.
Yes, when you
even,
visit, please don't touch the surface of the
Don't
house.
touch Yeah.
Yeah, but Carol, you devised actually a cool way of matching it.
the mixture that we had was already, it was a little bit too dark. So I thought if I scraped some of it from underneath the windowsill to see if that would match, and actually it did match pretty well. So the places that are right up front by the door, I used that kind of leftover scraped up sand and paint mixture and just applied that. And I could use the darker mixture on the sides that were more in the shade that didn't fade quite as much.
Yeah, yeah, very cool, like recycling. And just so everybody knows, the portico here was originally sand painted. The original sand painting still exists on a couple of the
Witness areas.
Yeah, witness areas, as we call them. And so paint analysis was performed there to get the right color of the sand, right color of the paint, and use that for the restoration.
And the columns and the sand and the rusticated stone have the same material, or they did anyway. In Jefferson's time, they certainly did.
Yeah, but the columns are actually stone, unlike the rustication on that wall of the portico.
It's made to look like stone.
Yeah, yeah, because stone is hard to get places.
Right.
It's heavy.
Well, I think it was a popular design choice too in that time period.
So it was done at Mount Vernon as well.
Mount Vernon.
Yes, absolutely. We have a question actually from Facebook from George about how we prioritize projects in our department. It's a very, very good question. We always have a really long list of projects that we need to get to. And so I would say prioritization happens primarily because of, severity of an issue, and will an issue cause future damage. Like if anything is at risk of causing future damage, that's immediately to the top of the list. But there's other things that, like for instance, the sand painting, which I think has kind of been a little bit on the back burner until there's some space to actually tackle it. Things also get prioritized if they just look really bad.
we do a walk around a couple times a year, and we just look at different things that need to be done. And plus the fact, especially Jolen and I are both working on the house all the time, so we notice things that go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we meet very frequently to discuss everything that needs to be done, and and then also we make space for projects to restore areas that have not been restored yet. So
large projects.
One of the things about Monticello, which is I think most interesting, is that once you learn enough about it, you realize, oh, this is not a static place. We are constantly improving our interpretation of this place. It has been under restoration for now 100 years, but that doesn't mean that we're ever done. We're constantly doing research and finding out new things about how things were toward the end of Thomas Jefferson's lifetime. And so that can mean that we have a list of many places that we would love to get to, and that is limited by time and also money.
Right.
Yeah. So a couple examples. Well, one is the ceiling of the North Piazza. We know should have been a traditional 3-coat lime plaster, but it was replaced and is now like a wooden beadboard ceiling. So one of these days we'd love to replace that, but it requires time and money. So small details, if you notice, if you come back to Monticello multiple times over multiple years, you will notice changes, and that's because we're chipping away at this list.
And documentation, Jefferson's documents, Chinese railing to picket fence is another big one. So he had, the research was done that's what he more than likely had. Is the picket fence.
So speaking of that, we have a few upcoming projects that we're going to talk about today. One of them is the South Square chimney piece surround. So if you walk into the South Square of the main floor of the house, you will see that the surround on the fireplace, the chimney piece, is like it's a wooden surround that doesn't fit right. It's kind of sticks out too far. Yep. And we believe that was installed sometime during the Levy family ownership, probably because the marble that was originally there was either lost or stolen or broken, like it fell off and broke. Could have been vandalism. We don't know why, but some physical investigation of the place coupled with documentary evidence confirms that marble was in fact installed there. The story behind these marble fireplace surrounds is that Thomas Jefferson ordered, he was still working on Monticello and trying to quote unquote finish it before his death in 1826. And one of the best examples of that is the order of these marble fireplace surrounds from Italy in 1824. They weren't installed until 1825, and he ordered 8, so 1 for each fireplace of the main floor, and 7 of them remain. They're
Right.
here.
Yep.
1 of them is missing. That's this south square one. So we are hoping, probably not this winter, but next winter, to replace this wooden surround with a marble that is appropriate.
Right.
So how do we know what's appropriate? This is kind of one of the things we've been working on recently, which has involved going back and forth with Italian marble experts across the world to essentially figure out what is the missing marble. We have a
Because
list.
he has a description, right?
Exactly.
Of different types of marble that he used.
Yeah, so we have a letter from Thomas Appleton, who was the consul to Livorno in Italy, who was the person who actually shipped Thomas Jefferson the 8 fireplaces, and he described them based on the size of the marble and also the type. So we were able to kind of match the different types to the existing surrounds and narrow it down to what's missing,
Right.
which it turns out is one that's described as mischio or miscellaneous, which is a little bit tricky to match, but there are other fireplace surrounds that are also labeled as mischio or miscellaneous. So we were able to kind of use something similar to those.
Right.
And unfortunately, what our Italian experts have told us is that what would be really perfect it's not available anymore. It's not quarried. So, but we can find a really close aesthetic match. And so we're hoping to bring that back, which is going to be really exciting. I think it's going to look
a
a lot
better than what's there.
A lot better than
now.
what was there.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see, what other upcoming projects do we have? We've got the stairwell work that you've been doing.
The stairwell work. So there's a little scroll detail on the sides of the stairwells. On the north side, which is where I'm working presently, there's a lot of damage over there. We're not exactly sure why they're all missing. One of the things that we do know is to get furniture to any of the upper levels, you either have to go up the center of a very narrow staircase or go over the mezzanine balcony. I know from moving ladders and other large things up and down that going up the staircases is kind of tricky, and have an idea that it's a fairly delicate detail. It could have been easily broken. It's less than 1/4 of an inch of pine. So I'm working on copying the pattern. So we're going to each individual spot. We have like a ghost of what was there because it's been painted so many times. So a ghost is some type of remnants that shows us the shape and placement of what was there before. So we can roughly get an idea of what the scroll looks like in each individual place, and they are individual. Each one was hand cut. So there's some variation in the whips and the curve and everything like that. So I go to each individual place. Carol's been helping me make patterns for it, and from there we kind of clean up the edges and stuff like that to because the paint is not a perfect match.
Right.
Kind of clean up the edges and stuff like that, and then I'm cutting out each individual piece, and we're using an animal hide glue to put them in place. Animal hide glue, we use that because it is reversible. If we ever want to, or someone in the future wants to remove it, they can remove it.
Yeah.
Or I just messed up and I need to take it off.
Well,
yeah, it does happen. I had some of them, the actual ones, break on me during installation, so I had to remove them. Yeah, they're pretty fragile.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and on the reversibility is important.
It is
also, documentation wise, we don't know why these ones are missing.
Right. Right.
We are blessed with a wealth of documentation from Jefferson's lifetime here, but we have much less documentation from afterward. And also the documentary standards for people in our profession have really advanced over 100 years. So we are we are taking great care to document which scrolls have been
Right.
replaced, and also you're labeling each
I'm
one.
labeling them. All of them are numbered.
Mhm.
I date everyone that I put in, and I also put my initials on the back of them.
Yeah.
Because we keep a journal, and we reference ourselves by our initials in it, so that people know who's been working where.
Yeah.
So,
At a place like this, people will be looking back at
Mhm.
our records for hundreds of years
Right.
and
Yep.
wondering what did they do,
what did they
there, and
do?
why, and how.
And we
Yeah.
found things like from Henry, like that, the mason that worked on the house when it was the picture rail. And it
That's
was one of the
right.
hooks that he had
Yes.
put his initials behind it. So we knew that he replaced it
That
in
was
Right.
really
like
helpful.
1990 something.
Yeah,
But-
because even when you're using like a traditional material, it's useful to have it marked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the other way to get around that is actually to use a material that is not traditional. So in the
Yeah.
instance of another project that we're coming up on, which is the replication of pieces of
The
composition
architectural
ornament.
composition on the frieze in the
Yeah.
house. So yeah, there's so many pieces that are missing or broken or repaired terribly so I'm trying to replace what's there, but basically it's trying to create a mold of what's there in place, and then kind of put a modern mixture into it, and then eventually we'll put pieces in like that are missing. We'll replace those and
Mhm.
repair some of the old pieces
Yeah.
too.
But you're using a modern material, and that's
Mhm.
so that anybody who does sampling in these
Right.
areas in the future will be able to tell, oh, okay, this is part of a
Right.
repair. We're also
Exactly.
documenting everywhere that you're
Right.
doing work.
Right.
That's a very cool project.
It
I
is.
think also in the end, if we keep moving on with this, we will end up with like a library of molds of all of the composition that appears in the house. And for those of you who don't know, composition ornament is called composition just because it's made from this putty, basically,
Right.
which is made from hide glue and
Whiting,
linseed oil.
Resin.
and resin.
Yep, tree resin.
Mhm.
So this kind of material all put together, when it's heated up, it gets kind of soft and moldable. You compress it into molds and then put it up on the wall, and it stays. And it's really beautiful. This is highly detailed ornament that Jefferson had installed by, the person who made it was George Andrews, an Irish composition maker, and it's really, really beautiful. But because it's almost all up near the ceiling, basically over a couple hundred years of temperatures cycling, cold, hot, this putty that is soft when warm has become very brittle. Pieces have broken off. So it's
Souvenir hunters possibly in the past. The
Possibly.
house sat empty for many years.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
we do know that UVA students actually had access to the house at times. So
Yeah, so we have our work cut out for us
Right.
with the composition ornament, but it's a very exciting project. Yeah. So that's a little bit of what we've been up to and what we're hoping for.
Can we end on a question?
Oh, sure. I hear there's a question.
George would like to know your single favorite restoration project and why.
Ooh, that's a nice question.
Oh my
Anyone got
gosh.
something?
I think one of my first projects was my favorite, and that was replacing the roof on the South Pavilion. Actually got to climb inside the South Pavilion roof that no one had been in there for probably 80 years. So, and I actually found a little, it's called a Mason's line pin that I found in there from when they actually built the structure from the 1770s.
And
So,
it's now on exhibit in our visitor
that's
center.
right. So that was one of mine. It was a fun project.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I don't know. It's kind of hard to pick a favorite. That's I think anything like the scroll project, something like that is something that I've wanted to work on since I got here first. I've been looking at those. So I've actually got to probably pick that one as my favorite. But any time that I can break out, especially traditional woodworking tools when I've got my chisels and my planes all laid out in front of me and everything like that, I know it's going to be a good day.
I don't know if this is a favorite, but I just really need to mention this wild project that I did in the very early days of when I was here, which was the replacement of the ceiling of the east portico. So that involved taking down the compass rose.
Right.
It involved taking down a beadboard ceiling. It involved lead abatement, you know, because all of the material we were removing had lead paint on it. And then I think that one of the nights that we were removing the lead, that we were hit by a horrible thunderstorm, and it was like 11 p.m. and it was pouring down rain, and we were dealing with all this wood that was coming off the building, and I was, you know, holding my breath, I'll say. And I think it was a night that we were here till 2 a.m. or something. So we have some really fun, ridiculous stories from our work here.
It's not always a 9 to 5 type of job
Not
here.
exactly.
We can be here in the middle of the night.
Yeah, well, there are
know.
some things that are easy to do during the day around visitors, and then there are other things that like the ceiling of the east portico. That's how everyone enters the house. That's not something we could do during our opening hours.
Painting the floor cloths like in the hall has to be done at night after hours.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a vivid memory. I don't know if I would actually say that it's my favorite, but it gives you a little bit of an idea. All right. Any other questions that we've got? All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. It's been a pleasure to share with you some of the work that we're up to, and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.